Thank you, Jose, for starting to record. It is 9:30. Nicole, thank you for signing in. Sandra, thank you for signing in. I'm excited for Friday. I'm excited to have this presentation. I hope it is helpful for people. I tried to pick out a picture of what coaching reconciliation would be like. So here we have Gary Kubiak trying to reconcile with an umpire. So we'll see if our coaching reconciliation works. Okay, so what we're going to be doing today is talking about the coaching reconciliation that I sent out last week. Introduce the spending reconciliation that will be we'll discuss in more detail next week, and then go over some basics of what is reconciliation. Does that sound okay with everybody? And please put in chat either the agenda sounds okay, or if there was something else that you needed. Sounds good. Thank you, Sandra. I can count on you for commenting. Thank you, Heather. Sounds good. Veronica said sounds good. So I have 3 goods. I think I can go. All right. So I promised that I would give an RTT update if I got one. I did not get yet a CC at R&R announcement yet in my email this morning. So there is nothing new as of last week except for that October 31 deadline is now, I put it in quotes. I know that the state is working really hard to get everything done. There will be more to come later. I do want to remind you that I do put in the announcements as soon as I get the CC, R&R, and any announcements from OECD that I think everybody needs. I put that on the announcements forum, and you can always click the follow button if you want to get notified whenever I add something or Jose adds something to the announcement. And Nicole asks, agenda sounds good. Will we be able to get a copy of the PowerPoint later? Certainly. I hope it's helpful. Okay, I tried to mute the participants, but it looks like we have a couple feedback, and I wasn't able to mute everybody. So if you hear feedback, then you might be, phone might not be muted. Okay? All right. So I would like a parking lot volunteer or chat box monitor. So it worked really well. I think Deb Becker was the one last time. I'm not positive it was her. But just make sure that I'm recording copy and paste questions into Word. So in a Word document, you would be recording any questions that come up. And then if I answer, type the answer that's given. Interrupt me if it's related to understanding whatever people are saying. So if I don't notice what's in the box, and then save questions for the end that don't have to do with understanding, and I might be able to, I'll send a follow-up document, and then mark questions we cannot answer so I can follow up with my gurus. So do I have a volunteer that could be my chat box monitor? Okay, Jose is going to do it. All right, so thank you, Jose. I'll put you at standard. If anybody wants to do it in the future, feel free to ask, and Jose, I'm sure, will gladly give up his role as chat box monitor. Okay. Okay, the coaching reconciliation. I'm curious on how many that are on the call were involved with the coaching reconciliation and how many were not. So if you could say I was involved and I was not, or I was not, because we're going to be specifically talking about the coaching reconciliation. Okay, we've got 1 and 1. 1 and 2 and 2. Okay, we're about halfway there. Aware but not involved. I was not. Okay. So we got, it looks like half and half. The purpose of the call is to sort of go over the coaching reconciliation. I'll do a high level first, and actually I'll do a high level of also the spending reconciliation that's coming. You'll probably get my email on Monday, hopefully early Monday. So I'll give you a high level, and then for those that actually want to get in detail, I'll save that for the end. Okay, so what we sent out was a spreadsheet with coaching problems that we found in Sugar. So there were 6 tabs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Whoops, that's 7. I can't count. There were 7 tabs, and there were problems that we sort of found that were common to some of the councils. For example, there was coaching details, but it had dollar requisitions. And there were 72 of those errors that involved 17 councils. There were some that had prep times over 3 hours. And some of these are okay, but others, we just wanted you to verify some of these issues. So there were 128 records that involved 6 councils. We tried to update some coaching details based on things that looked fairly easy for us to fix. Maybe the hours AM, PM was obvious to us. Sometimes it wasn't, though. So there were 23 of those involving 8 councils. Then we had 200 records that had over 7 hours in one day. So that is getting to be fairly long for a coaching session. So we had individuals check that to either verify, or in some cases there were like 100 hours in one day, so that obviously wasn't valid for one day. Then there were some coaching details that did not have any requisition, or there was nothing tied to a funding stream. So there were 317 of those, so those definitely had to be fixed. And then, interesting enough, there were 39 coaching details where the time was less than 0. So obviously the time was, there was a mistake in entering the time, because you can't have negative hours. No matter how much we'd like to try, there really is no negative hours. So this is just an overview of what was sent out. Are there any questions on that? And I will go over details of each of these for any that have not worked on or have questions at the end for the specifics. I'm not hearing whether there are any questions. Just say okay, or if you have a question. Good. I got 2 okays. Thank you. I really appreciate that feedback. So now I got 5 okays. All right. All right. One of the things I'm worried about is when I send out, or somebody sends this out, this is actually pointing out potential mistakes. And the issue, though, is, you know, we all make mistakes, and it's like, how can we help each other to correct them? But I do, when I sent this to you, if there's a few people could say how you felt when you got this. This spreadsheet, because little bit worried about, I think it's a good idea to send these out, but I don't want to offend people. I don't want to make people angry. So that's where I'm at. So I was a little bit uncomfortable pointing out some problems. And the whole thing is just to try to help everybody. Okay, we got fine. I appreciate feedback. Fine. Okay, good. But you know, even if you do feel unhappy or sad or angry, I'm a perfectionist, so I would be a problem. I might take this the wrong way if it was sent out without enough explanation. So I hope I explained it enough, just because I don't like to make any errors. And but I do appreciate when people are nice about it. Okay. Yeah, I would be surprised and unhappy too if I made mistakes. However, what was really good is that I had probably at least 8 conversations with different councils, and because I wasn't either clear enough on the instructions or they wanted individual help to solve specific problems. So I think this was really good, and I'm thinking about trying to do this more often, is if I find common errors, to fix them. Okay, having the resource is good. I can understand being frustrated too, because the assumptions about the specifics, you know, because we do one global spreadsheet that may be error in one council, it might not be an error in another one. So maybe we can say a little bit better in the instructions document that the detail may be fine. These are some things that look odd when you look at all the records in the, in the database. So that might be helpful, Lisa. Okay, so when I was talking to the individual councils, one of the comments that I got was really interesting to me, is that they appreciated to see the common errors, and so that they can, when they're actually inputting or when they're reconciling or reviewing, it just brings those type of things to the front. So that was cool for me to hear, that seeing those 7 sets of common errors was helpful. Just even, and the person that gave me that feedback said she's already, when she's inputting records, has those in mind, and it's helped her. Okay, so and people have said, even in this email, appreciate the support of finding things to correct. One of the interesting things was that, even the wrong council was on some records, or the wrong coach. And what that brought up is like a whole section of records that we didn't even have to go into to correct. Like there was one council where it had about 15 records where the coach, they never even recognized the coach's name. So we found out that it was the wrong council. So that was a good error to fix, because it pointed out other issues. So in some cases, when you get these reconciliation spreadsheets, you don't have to go to every single record. If you see a common thing that needs to come to our input, make sure you let us know. Okay. Definitely not all the fields were filled in, and sometimes that was by accident, and sometimes that's on purpose. Again, this gave people tips to spot easy errors, like the negative hours. That should be fairly easy to see, because it calculates after, and sometimes you have to hit save, but double check on the negative dollars and the negative hours. That's a fairly easy one to spot. There were some weak descriptions, and this was when I was talking to some people. If I were editing, or if I were auditing records, and people are spending a lot of time or a lot of money, and it's a very poor description, that would sort of be a concern of mine. So like if it's 10 hours in a day and it has like 4 words that really don't describe why 10 hours would be spent, then that would, that I would I would recommend that you look at descriptions, especially for high expense items and high hour items. Are there any questions on this slide? Yes, Tina asked, can a very detailed coaching log that is attached to coaching details notes be sufficient? Yes, I might in the description just say see notes if it's really important. That's an excellent way to do that too. Okay, I'll go on to the next one. Okay, things that came up for me, this is not things that come up too, especially me. There were a lot of training and test records, and sometimes it was hard to tell, is this really a training or a test record? Because sometimes there was only a date. When troubleshooting with a couple councils, we figured out that that's what was happening, is that when new people were showing up, that people were doing training records. And so if you are doing training records, it would be helpful for you to do, type something in the description that says test record, or if there is an error in the record you notice, type in something like there's an error in the record. So that will help it later when we're troubleshooting. Sometimes you don't remember, and this was like somewhere in November and things like that where people were doing a lot of training. So that would be helpful. We did find out that deleting records creates problems. One of the things that my advisors have told me, even though I have the power to delete records, we really, really don't want to delete records because sometimes we delete them by accident. For example, one of the councils where we were deleting because we didn't recognize the coach and found out later that the coach was in a different council, so the whole thing was messed up. So we probably shouldn't have deleted, well, we shouldn't have deleted those records without talking to the real council. Okay, so generally, when you need to delete records, let us know, but very rarely will we actually delete them. We'll probably mark them as canceled or something like that. And it was interesting me on when I sent this out is the number of people that need generally a walkthrough that helps just to get started. So either like with the pictures of the demo like we do, and some people really do like the reading the steps that I send along. So that it really is dependent on the person and how you learn. Okay, one of the interesting things for me was learning about how sensitive many of you are about deadlines. So I sent out the October 25th deadline, which really was my internal deadline to try to get the work done for OEC, for Race to the Top, because I will be working with Sharon and Bill and the 4 QRS coordinators to input the final results of budgets, but partly what we need is all this reconciliation done to make sure everything's clean for the Race to the Top after October, after November 1st. So this just was interesting to me, and I can understand now in hindsight. And make sure that I let you know if it's an OEC deadline versus my own or ECLA's internal. And then my own feelings, I showed the slide before, of perfectionism, so that came up for me too.
Rick, Lisa has a question on the board.
Yes, thank you. Can there be a status that is not delete but allows us to be suspended, or allow us to be able to make it obvious to ignore it? It's a great suggestion, Lisa. Jose, if you can sort of highlight that, and we'll see what we can do. I know there's like the canceled not billable and canceled billable in some cases, but maybe something universal for every record would be helpful. One of the things that came up too, though, is like, for example, if there's spending that already is attached to a requisition and already is calculated and all sorts of stuff. So there's a challenge for us, but if we mark them, and then we could go over them with the councils if it would create a conflict. Any other questions or comments for things that came up? Maybe things that came up when you did the reconciliation that might be helpful to others? Yes, canceled might be the status we need. So add that, Jose, to Lisa's note above it.
That's just one I don't use too much, so I don't think about it. So good reminder.
Yeah. Okay. So I will be sending out a spreadsheet similar to the coaching one, but right now there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 tabs instead of the 7, and possibly one more. I'm going to ask for your feedback after that. So the tab names are going to be called spending created after invoice, and essentially the spending record was created after the invoice date. It could be correct, but we just want you to double check the dates because that could easily be that there was a typo in the date. And then discount shipping issues where it's either the shipping was less than 0 or the shipping was greater than $50. So again, that might be something to check. It'd be very unusual for shipping to be over $50, but certainly that's possible. Okay, and then we'll have, there's spending details without QIPs, without the QIP goals. And so part of the requirements is that all the details meet a QIP goal, and there's a lot without those. The status for those before July 1st that don't say reconciled, there's a lot of records for that, and so the status is important for us to know that you have done reconciliation, that you have checked against your QuickBooks, that or whatever your accounting system is, that you know that the records are right. So there's quite a bit of that, and I might be talking about that more at the end of this for sort of the basics, or if anybody has questions on that. Okay, if the spending QIP doesn't really seem to match with what the actual QIP goal is, that's another group. There's a few that have negative spending, which is probably just a typo, where only 25 of them, but where the cost of the item is, you're actually getting money back for that item, or they're paying you to take the item, so it doesn't make sense. And there's a few where the invoice is in the future, like in 2017. So again, that's just probably a typo. And then in some cases, the discount applied is actually greater than the whole total. So again, that's probably a typo in the record. Any questions on these issues? You will be getting on Monday a document describing these 7 types of errors. And again, similar, what you're going to be doing is there'll be a URL that you use and make the edit. Okay, the steps that you do is you open the spreadsheet, and you can look at the spreadsheet, and some you may, does the first common error include back enters? The spending created after the invoice? Yes, it does, Heather, and those, it may be that those are okay. So you could just look at the spreadsheet and see, okay, do these dates look okay? So like the first one that I looked at, they were all back enters, and so they may be okay. So you don't have to go to every record to correct it, but if you notice a pattern that that you need to go in, then you may need to correct it. You're welcome. Any other questions? I went too fast because this is a lot of information. Teresa, I'm excited that you're excited to see a spreadsheet, and a reconciliation spreadsheet, no less. Okay, I'll wait just about another. Love the data. Yes, good. You're a woman after my own heart. Okay. So this is actually similar information to what you check with those spreadsheets. So I'm going to go to one spending record, look around it with some of the issues. Okay, so here's a spending record. It's good old bill and our bill test ECC. So spending created after the invoice. So you would look down to the invoice date. Right now it's empty. And then look at, if it's a back order, that may make sense. But if it isn't, so here's the date created. So right now this was created, usually if for a good record, this is created before you get the invoice. Okay. Bye, Teresa. We will miss you, especially since you're excited about spreadsheets. Okay. All right, discount shipping issues. So again, you would look on the spending record. So if the shipping was over $50, it would appear in the total shipping or additional fees. QIP lists spend details. Okay, so if there was, and in this case, there's no requisition tied to it. So what you would do is, generally when you want the right requisition, you type the abbreviation of whoever the provider is, and then choose which kind, if it's dollars, then you'll be doing that. But then one of the problems we had is the wrong one. If it was coaching, they put in the dollars, and dollars they put in coaching. So that will be one of the errors that you can check for. Okay, unreconciled spending. So again, right now the status is just received, and until this actually says reconciled, this is sort of in record. Once it's reconciled, that means it matches your books, so your accounting. So we know that and by putting that reconciled status, we know that somebody has looked at it and verified. So make sure when you do that it is actually checked against another record. Usually for spending, it would be an your accounting software. Okay, mismatched QIP categories. Okay, for the actual spending, let's see, hopefully. I didn't save that, but the QIP goals don't really match what the item is. So you can check that here and change those.
So Rick, given that we are working with some records that are fairly old, and some QIP items maybe have been archived, retired, whatever we're going to call a completed QIP goal that's not active anymore. But we'll be able to access those to tie them to them.
The old goals that are already, that's a really good question.
I already noticed
Jose,
that with the requisitions that are archived.
Yeah. Jose, can you capture that? I need to ask Bill that. We might have to, like in the, when we were doing the requisitions, we had to type in archives, like you said, rather than the abbreviation.
Yeah, no, you can get it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can you get it, did you say?
I haven't tried that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so we'll figure out how to put in the old QIP goals that are already done. But that's a really good question. I hadn't thought of that. Okay, negative spending details. Again, if you would look on the details where the, this is the SD, so spending detail, where the total cost is below zero. So you probably the unit item price they put in as a negative, or the number of items they put in as negative. So again, there weren't that many, but it's good to look for since there were some. Okay, again in the invoice in the future, so again that's just probably a typo. People typed 2017 versus 2000, whatever year we are, 2016. Okay, and then the discount greater than the total, which was interesting to me that there were so many. So if I go back to the spending, and then here's the total request amount where the actual discount was greater than, so let's see, this was $14 or $15, and the total request amount was $13. Possible return? Yeah, so double check it, Lisa, if it was a return. Jose asked, does reconciliation still happen only once a month? And actually when I go into the sort of reconciliation 101 that's after this, then no, it happens all the time. So reconciliation, in my viewpoint, is that you type all your records in, and then you still have the document and you double check. Because I know, like I make a typo probably once every other email or something like that. So if I don't check, then obviously the typos will go out. So there's typos, and with none, even worse. So I would say it happens at the time of entry. You do a double check or reconcile that what you typed is what should be really there. But then monthly is the very common one where you're looking at totals, for example. And if your totals don't match, then you have to go in and try to figure out what's wrong. But you might even be an annual reconciliation. Okay, any other questions on what the upcoming spending reconciliation? Well, Lisa, you said possible returns. Make sure in the description that it's clear that these are returns or something like that, so it explains odd things like negative spending. Because we did have negative hours, and I'm sure people didn't really return hours. I don't know how you would do that. Okay, there's one item that I would like to ask. It does take a while to add a pivot table to the data. I asked Sharon this. She loves pivot tables, so she said, you know, go ahead and add it. But I would like to know for the people that will be doing the work on the spending, how many of you know how to use pivot tables and would use them even without much, I mean, if I just gave it to you. So go ahead and say, okay, we got one. Philip, then, so can you do the reconciliation for everybody? Okay, we have 3 that have not used it much at all, or 4, and then some that have minimal. So far, nobody has said that they have. Well, there's one that has used it before, but not for this. So they might, that one person might be helpful. Okay, and it does look that quite a few want training. So what I'm going to do is actually show the pivot table. And Mandy, could you unmute your phone?
Can you hear me, Rick?
Are you there? Yeah, I apologize very much. I don't want to put you on the spot, but do you mind if I use, I wasn't able to check my email after I sent that. Do you mind if I use your spending data?
A little bit of it. Go ahead. There's a lot there.
Okay. What I'll do is I'm just going to show the pivot table.
Okay.
So it's all sort of rolled up numbers. So
Okay.
people have an idea. Okay. Okay, so I am opening up in another window. If I can move this other stuff out of the way. So bear with me while I'm opening up the spreadsheet. So sorry for the pause. We need somebody to sing or something like that. Okay, so what I did is download all the data for the councils and then created a pivot table. And this is what a pivot table looks like. And I just did this, so a total of the requested amount, have the years over on the left side, the actual funding stream at the top, and then, whoops, and then the status across each of the columns. So for example, there's a weird date. You know, it just said less than 285, and there's a back-entered item in 2015. So this looks like it could be a canceled or something like that. Okay, so Philip, I'm going to go back up a little bit. A pivot table is a summary of a huge group of data. And you generally have a summary by a couple different criteria. In this case, it's by time and then by status across the top. So the columns are time and the status is across the top. And so all the data are there. It's just a quick view of your data. So you can see what each of the status, and something, you know, and it could be very legitimate, but you might see a problem by just looking. So if you, what I did is I made the third variable at the top so you could look at each of your funding streams. So you could choose CCAP, you can choose school readiness, and here you might even notice a funding stream that has a typo in it. So you could even see an issue, and that's a major problem if there's a funding stream that doesn't have the right data entered for it. So, so if we were to look at any of these, then the totals change based on whatever funding stream you have. You could check 2 if you wanted, but in most cases you probably just want to look at 1. So you can see that they change. And what I've done is, let me go back to, so we'll do FFN. Since we are supposed to be working on FFN, we're going to be, if you get FFN, I told Jose to take it out because we are the one that is doing the FFN funding stream. The ECLA is, and we need to reconcile our own records, so we need to work on that a little bit more. So, but if you click the plus on the row by the date, then you'll see what month. In this case, there was only June, but you could see January, February, March, April, May, and you could see if you needed to change something. In our case, we need to reconcile all of these. Okay. Any question? I mean, how many, now that I've sort of explained it, I know I won't be able to explain it a lot in the instructions for those that don't have a lot of background, but I could, I could do a future, actually I'll ask you 2 questions. How many want me to go ahead and include this and you play around it in your spreadsheet? And I'll just get an idea. I'll either put it in all or not. So just put an answer in your chat window if you want a pivot table in your spreadsheet.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
This is purely a summary from Sugar. It's not comparing it to QuickBooks. It just totals it so that you can, correct?
Exactly. So yeah, you could definitely use the totals to compare it to, let's say if you drilled this down and looked at your total for June of 2016 and make sure it matches your QuickBooks.
Okay.
Yeah, it definitely has nothing, there's no link, we have no link to any of your accounting systems. Okay, so far everybody has said go ahead and put it in. If you want further instructions, and I'll ask probably on another call, or maybe even if we have time next week on that call, I'll include more on pivot tables. Does that sound okay? Cool. All right. Okay, there was one question that came up for wait lists. As you, it seems like so long ago where we had the call with the OEC about what's going to be happening with Race to the Top. But one of the key parts of that is that you are going to wait list your Race to the Top. Even though this says school readiness, I got that one. So this will be only for Race to the Top. But if you look on the actions, for this one that's accepted, there is no wait list. So one of the questions that came up is, well, how do I wait list for that, getting ready for the school readiness? And this is a list of all the available actions that you'll have on an application, but they don't all show on all different status. See, waitlist, requisition, and application is there. And a new one that OEC will be using for the Race to the Top after November 1st, and we aren't sure exactly when after November 1st now, but is that they'll have their own action. OEC will transfer funds for approval and send the MOU. So that's, it's programmatically in there, but it depends on what the status is on what actions are available. So again, if you look at it, yep.
Isn't there one more action that's just, when you're in the application that just says, you have 2 options. You have wait list, or you have the wait list that's listed here, which is wait list of requisitions and application. And I noticed that if I selected the wait list, requisitions, and application, it wasn't showing up in the list and reports for OEC. So I went back and then just did the regular wait list. But
Oh,
but it surprised me.
Okay, these are actions and not status. So that's a little confusing. So in order to turn it into a wait list, you use the action. So action
But
here.
it was an action list when I did it.
Right. So they aren't, like in this case, there's no wait list. So it has to be in the right status in order to get it to wait list. So sometimes it will take more than one action to get to the point where you can see the wait list. Does that make sense?
Well, what I was seeing is an application that was in a submitted status, and I wanted to move it to a wait list status. And I had two options. One was listed as just wait list, and the other one was to wait list the application and the requisitions. And if I chose one, which was just the one that said wait list, it would appear on the OEC report. If I chose the other one, it would not. But they were both related to wait listing.
Okay, and that was an action?
Those are in actions, yeah.
Okay, so it's possible. How long ago did you do that?
Oh, it would be a few weeks.
Okay, because this has been cleaned up probably since then. So there's only one wait list.
One option now. Okay.
Right.
That'll be helpful.
Yeah, you know, we're continually trying to catch those types of things. It's pretty complicated because each different status has a set of actions that you can do. So, you know, after a application is accepted, you have forfeit remaining balances, cancel MOU amendment, or send MOU amendment. And so here's what it looks like on your view, and here's what it looks on the programming view. So for each of the status, there's a set of actions that happen. So in order to get to the only time that waitlist requisitions and applications is available is in the submitted status. So you can see in the programming it says submitted, and you have these options, and waitlist is one. MOU out for signing, you can also do waitlist, and then insufficient resources to approve, you can also do a waitlist. So when we're using the race to the top, the only one that will make sense is after submitted. Because you can't send an MOU out for the race to the top after the November 1st, when we're doing these waitlist options. And insufficient resources to approve, if you try to do that, it won't work. So when you try to send it out. So in the case that we will be dealing with race to the top, you have to be in submitted status in order to get to waitlist.
Mm-hmm.
I know that was a question for a couple people. Was there any questions on the wait list, or did I answer it? A couple people, I said on the phone I would answer it. Is that clear? Okay, I'm waiting for at least a couple of people to say that's okay, go on, or have a question. Good. Thanks, Lisa. Okay. Okay, so the rest of the call, actually it's already 10:20. How many people still would like more details on sort of beginning reconciliation? If you don't, you can go ahead and get off the call, and if there's anybody that does, I can certainly stay on. It might go longer than 10:30 though. More please. I got 2, 3. Okay, so if you're okay with the basics of reconciliation, you're welcome. Okay, we got a few that will stay and a few that are going. So I'm going to get some more water. so my voice works, and then I will resume in about 2 minutes for the basics, okay? Rick, who's that asking the question just now? Was that Carolyn? Lisa was the one that communicated, but she wasn't really asking questions. Okay, I'm back for, it looks like, we still have quite a few on the phone. Okay, I'm actually going to ask those that are left, I can do one of two things with the time. Do you want sort of to go over the actual coaching spreadsheet, or do you want sort of an overview of what reconciliation is first? So say coaching spreadsheet or overview. One overview, one coaching spreadsheet. Two overviews. Three overviews. Four overviews. Five overviews. Sorry, Tina. Looks like overview is going to get it. Tina, I don't know how long you have, but at the end, I will go over the coaching spreadsheet, or if you want to, or if anybody else wants to do a separate call, we can make a specific call for the coaching spreadsheet either later today or on Monday. So for at the end, Tina, if you leave, if you could actually send me an email just reminding me that you want to go over it, that would be great. And then we can either go over it together, or we'll make a little meeting with whoever at the end of this call wants to go over it. Okay, all right. We had a question during the process that sort of is an introduction, is how important it is for us to assign the correct coach to a coaching requisition. And I would just like, in your own, whoever's left on the call, put in, you know, if you have a requisition, let me go to it. And so we have, in this case, Sharon. How important is it, do you all think, to have the correct coach attached to a coaching record? So just say important, very important, not important, I don't know, as your answer. It's important, very important, very important. Yeah, I would agree. And actually, in any time that you're doing reconciliation, if you have to go back and say, let's say you ended up with one of these records that have 17 hours in one day. So it most likely is a mistake. How do you know, go back, how do you know how to fix it? You know, it's like, so it's easier if you have that kind of detail, so you can go back and check it. That's one reason. Another thing is if you start doing data analysis and, you know, look at which coaches are working where and all sorts of stuff. That's important. Okay, so we got lots of important, but Deanna is saying important, but not as important as finding if it's external or internal. Okay. Okay, to add a coach, what you need to do is, if you don't have that person in already, you need to add a contact in Sugar. So if I just go in and add any contact, so if I create the contact, then put in all the information. The primary account would be your council, most likely. Put their email in. So just like you would add any other contact, that's how you would add a coach. And then when you go to either the lead coach or individual coach, you just type in their name. It is important that you put in the proper email. So again, to add a coach, you just add, it's just adding a contact. Okay. So, you know, sort of in the same line as how important is it the right date, the right hours, the right descriptions, the right coaching step, next steps, the right coach, correct dollars when you have spending items. You know, it sort of depends on who uses the records and why. And so the better the data is, the more likely that it's usable. If you just are putting in random data and make lots of mistakes, then obviously it's not usable at all. But then in some cases, like to go back, and when you're working with a provider and you want to know, okay, what did that coach do on that day? Because I want to, you know, do the next steps. It's important to have good data somewhere, and Sugar is one of the places that you can capture the data. Okay, so what I'd like you to do whenever there's a red is type what does it mean. So what does reconciliation mean to you? Reviewing and making sure everything is correct. Summarizing the coaching visit with detail. Comparing data that you have with what it should be. Comparing Sugar details to council records that balance. They balance, yeah. Okay, those are great answers. And it, you know, it does depend on who you talk to. You know, there is I like this Investopedia definition. Is reconciliation is an accounting process, so it's talking specifically in the accounting sense. It uses two sets of records to ensure that your figures are accurate and in agreement. Reconciliation is the key process to determine whether the money leaving an account matches the amount spent. So ensuring that the two values are balanced at the end of the recording period. If you have just one set of records, it's like really hard to tell, did you make a mistake? Because there's nothing to compare it to. So in this term, reconciliation is using two sets of records to make sure of accuracy. And I did like this little video, so for those of you that want to see that, videos don't work well on GoToMeeting, but if you want to see it, it was a 1.5 minute video of description of reconciliation. And so the big key is that this set of records matches this set of records. Okay, why do you reconcile? So go ahead and put in your answers for why reconcile. And actually, I'll go ahead, reviewing it and making sure everything is correct is one of the answers that were in the question before. And Tina says, so don't overspend. That's really important. To ensure everything balances, great answer. To make sure numbers are correct and to fix mistakes. I really like these answers, so you guys are not basic users. You're more advanced. One of the things that happen with the race to the top is when we started submitting the numbers, and this, I think it was for the ITQA, Monica had me do a number of reports, and the numbers were all over the place. And so that's sort of why we're concentrating on reconciliation, is for me to help, well, for ECLA to help you. So Jose's been working a lot on this too. For us to help you ensure data accuracy, so the numbers that OEC is getting are correct and it's useful for them, but also for your own internal uses too, to make sure you don't overspend, to make sure you have accurate records and things like that. Okay, and I found this table, it was interesting to me because everybody makes mistakes, and if you don't have tools for finding those mistakes or for correcting the mistakes, then then you'll just have more mistakes. So for example, people typing in zip codes, like half, about 1.5 out of 100 is a mistake every time. So even after people correct them, actually 1 out of every 200 zip codes have an error in them. Okay, so even grammatical errors, every one out of 100 words. One of the things that was interesting to me is this turning the control in the wrong direction when you're under stress. So if you just have to turn things right or left, and if you're under a lot of stress, half the time you make a mistake. So part of this is just saying that you have stress. So reconciliation is one of the tools to ensure data accuracy. Okay, so how do you reconcile? Again, type your answers in. I like how interactive everybody is. Compare records. Cross my fingers and pray. I like that one. Yes, I hope I did it right. I hope I typed it in. I hope I didn't goof up. I hope I didn't say something stupid when I typed this email. I like your sense of humor, Dorothy. Okay, so if you're actually looking at reconciliation, the easiest thing is to look at 2 sets of books or 2 sets of data. So for example, you're spending in sugar, you get the totals and you look at the totals of your accounting. And then if there's a discrepancy, then that's where the work comes out. And if you're crossing fingers and pray didn't work, then you have to do more work and figure it out. So for coaching records, they're a little bit harder just because of the hours are really what's important to OEC. Certainly the expenses, but overall expenses, so all expenses, even the QI spending, but even program spending is important. So that's sort of harder. Because you have sugar, it's a little bit easier to reconcile the details in that certain category. So, but you do have the hours in your accounting if you have a place to put hours in, or timesheets if it's internal. So that's, you can use those. There's also, just check those totals between the 2 sets of books. Some people have 2 different people input, and then they compare the records, or one person will input, one person will check. Some people will, type them in and then go over the details. The common error reports is what we're doing. We're sending some reports to you to help. If it's an outside auditor, some people pay for auditors to check their records, and it could be, just sort of like an internal audit to make sure everything's going okay. And they'll often do randomly every 10 or every 12 records or something like that. But if it's even a professional audit, that's what happened when I was principal of a school. They did, they audited actually 10 records, but they just randomly chose those, and I had to show very much detail for those 10 items. And another way that we are trying to do is to build the technology to help you audit. For example, it will show you the negative hours or negative dollars if you put that in. So we've tried to to help in some programming, and we are continuing to work. We are thinking about putting the coaching instead in the EC Connect portal, because that allows us to do some more error checking and make it look easier. So we are thinking about that, and we could have a pop-up, for example, if you put in AM and PM and reverse them, we could say you have negative hours, give you a little pop-up and say correct the hours or something like that. So we are thinking about that to make it easier. That's one of the items on the potential drawing board. Okay. Okay, when do you reconcile? So go ahead and type your answers in. Monthly, at least monthly, monthly. Spending monthly, coaching quarterly. We do spending reconciles with each approval. Okay, so I totally agree with all of you. So when you enter your data, I would double check, especially numbers. When I type numbers in, I will look at it after I type it in, and then I'll look at it again, and then at the end, I'll go over and double check all my numbers. Periodically, monthly, annually, quarterly. When there's a change, so I might, like if you have a new employee, I might do it more than monthly. Like I might check like their first day, and then maybe once every 3 days or once every week. So that would, or if you have a new process, so something changed, like sugar changes, so I might double check that quicker, or if there's a new focus. So right now, OEC is focusing on hours and QI materials, but they might say, okay, I want to start doing incentives, so like for your level 1, they might want to focus on that, so we might have to add a new module or something like that. If we add that new module, then I would probably reconcile more often than monthly. Okay, and if you're looking at a life cycle in the business, at the beginning, just like when I started working, you're running around with your head cut off, and you don't really have time to do really good data checking. You're just trying to get things out the door, out the window, or wherever you can send them. But as you get more and more knowledge, time, etc., you'll notice that there are certain errors that you're doing, and you have time to sort of think about them. So you can improve your quality of your organization by looking at your data and making it more efficient. So that might be another time. Or whenever a problem or a question, so that we did find some errors, and so those errors, that's when we're going through the records and saying, well, are there any other records like this? And it obviously, when you have an audit coming up or an inspection or something like that, you might want to make sure you have all your items dotted and T's crossed, all that kind of stuff. Okay. All right. So I do have time now. I mean, that's the overview of reconciliation, and again, we're 10 minutes over, and I would like to honor again your time, but I'd be happy to stay for Tina if she's still here, and it looks like she is, and anybody else that wants to go over the specifics of the coaching spreadsheet. So how many are going to stay and watch that? Just say it. Okay, Dorothy's staying. Andrea's staying. You're welcome, Nicole. Betsy's staying. got 3 that are staying. I need one of you to volunteer so I can use your spreadsheet. And who would like me to use their spreadsheet? Dorothy. Okay. Dorothy, are you Echo? I remembered. I'm usually bad at remembering that. So, ooh. See our files. Okay, there's Echo.
Rick, this is Dorothy. Can you hear me?
Hi, Dorothy. Yeah.
Hi. So I did change some things in there yesterday when I was trying to fix some items. So I don't know if that's going to mess you up when you have this.
Okay, and it looks like on yours, you only have, yeah, I'm looking at each of the tabs.
Mm-hmm.
So after we do yours, we might ask anybody else that's left if they're willing to use theirs as well.
Okay.
We might, because what I'll do is I'll show the spreadsheets, and you have none on the first sheet, none with longest prep times, none with updated CD, and 3 on this longest C after updates. So we'll go through those. But you don't have any on the other sheets either. Okay, so we'll go through just what you do in general, and then if anybody else wants more details, we can go through theirs. Okay, so on all the spreadsheets, the first column, or I think almost all the spreadsheets, is the detail URL. So I'm going to increase that so you can see it. So it's like, it looks okay to begin with, but then it has this weird number. This is actually the record number for coaching details. Each record has their own unique ID. You don't really need to know that, except for all you need to do is copy this. And paste it in your browser. So I'm in Google Chrome and going to the browser, and it puts that long Sugar Echo Colorado coaching details and in here. So it goes directly to your record that there's an issue with. And if we look back, the instructions will say this too, but again, I found that sometimes it's helpful for me to describe things without the instructions. So this is longest coaching details after updates. And what we did is just looked at this total time, and anything that was 7 hours or more ends up. So these may be fine. It may be fine that what's here, and we just want you to double check that you have good descriptions, that the hours are okay. And so I'll go back to this record. Okay, so it's an internal coaching record. It started at 1. Oh, you corrected this. Okay, so if you look at this, it used to be 8 hours. And so when we went in, what Dorothy did, it looks like, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, that you changed the hours to 1 hour instead of 8 hours.
Right. So
right?
Right. I had been lumping in the entire month in the requisitions, and that I guess I wasn't supposed to be doing. So I've broken
Thank you. Thank you for admitting that. You know, and I was learning as I was going, and that wasn't as clear to me at the beginning either, that you couldn't really lump. But it sort of makes sense that if, you know, if OEC really cares about the hours, on how much you're visiting and that kind of stuff. They really would like to see actual time you're going and actual dates. So they, it makes sense. It didn't make sense to me at the beginning, so I totally understand. So what Dorothy did is she changed these to actual hours. Did you go back to the coaching log?
Yes.
Okay, so she went back to the coaching log, put in the correct start and end date, and then created other records to come up with that 8 hours.
Right.
Okay, so that one was easy. So she could, she corrected that one, the longest coaching after updates. Okay, so we don't have any more records do I have another volunteer to use their spreadsheet? Andrea, and I should know what's your abbreviation? Okay. Ekbach, here we go. Or hopefully you have, okay, you don't have any coaching dollar with requisition. Longest prep time, okay. There's some on there, updated, none there. Longest C, which is the one that we just did. Reckless coaching, okay. So there's only the longest prep times. So, and here we looked at prep times that were 3 hours or more, because that would be unusual. So again, I'll copy the URL in the column A, go back into the coaching detail. So we see that this one is has 4 hours of prep time plus it went from 10 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. So it has a lot of prep time. And in this case, met with director and we discussed needs of facility. I will contact regarding questions and requisitions of verb, preschool, and documenting learning materials along with suggestions on health safety. My question to you guys, since you are more in the field, is this description enough, do you think, to sort of meet when it's a long prep time? Or prep/follow-up time?
Rick, we contract with Pueblo to do our coaching, so I think maybe it was some of it was drive time, and that's where the 4 hours came from.
Oh, okay. We had I was talking with another council yesterday, and sort of the question came up, you know, can we include drive time as, you know, prep time? And I think it's not clear on what should be done. So what I would do in that case is, just to make it clear, I would add what the drive time is in the description. So especially for long ones, if you're including drive time, that's how we sort of handled it with the other council, is
okay.
Drive time included, and it was like 2 hours to drive there. So we are looking at changing this to have something related to mileage or driving. Some people have in their external, let's see, is this internal or external? It's internal coaching.
It's actually it's external, but last year I was kind of confused about the internal external, and so I didn't put it down as external, but it is external.
Oh, okay. Because some people have in their contracts with the external coaches that drive time is included, and others have that they bill separately for drive time. So we are working on how to sort of help you all manage the transportation and mileage and all that with coaching. But for right now, if you're doing something that like adding drive time, for example, I would include it in the description.
So
to
do
be
I make that
transparent.
change, or should I have my coach make that the coach do the change in there?
I would, you know, if it were me, I would delegate it.
Okay.
But that's just my personal, because they can actually put real times in and all that kind of stuff. You'd be asking them anyway. So that would be my recommendation.
Okay.
Okay. Dorothy, thank you for supporting Andrea. You know, when somebody admits they did something wrong, it's so great that, first of all, that people are brave enough to do that, and second of all, that there's support out there, that we all make the same type of mistakes or misunderstand or whatever. So I really appreciate that.
I do too, Dorothy.
Okay, well, do we have any other, because we only have had those issues. Does anybody else on the call want us to look at theirs? But you see the general idea is you copy the URL, and then depending on what the problem is, so if it's prep time, if we updated your coaching details, we want you to verify that the times are correct. If there's a long coaching, we want to verify the time again. If it doesn't have a requisition, then make sure you put the requisition in. And if the coaching hours are less than 0, then obviously you'll need to edit the hours. Does anybody need any more? The only thing that we haven't covered is reckless coaching, I think. That so if you're looking at the coaching details, that this is blank. So it's either blank, or if it's the wrong requisition, it might say, so if I put BCELC, we had some that put in, you know, dollars instead of coaching, and some actually even put in the wrong funding stream. I'll cancel this so I don't mess up your record, Andrea. Any other questions? You're welcome. You're welcome. Reckless won't be on the Reckless spreadsheet, but it might be on, there's another spreadsheet that has the wrong requisition. Jose. You're welcome. So it looks like there's no more questions. So thank you all. I had a good time with you, and thank you for helping me out by contributing to the call.